Get informed at contentdelaware.org.
The old DSTP, it stood for the Delaware Student Testing Program, was a very unpopular test. And it was unpopular for a reason. It really was not very helpful. It was given typically late in the year. The results often came back after the school year was over. And all it really allowed you to do was compare how this year's fifth graders did compared to last year's fifth graders.
So bottom line is those data were no good to anyone, except we could look at trends and kind of think about what we were doing and where we could have been better.
So we've replaced that with something called the D.C.A.S, D-C-A-S. That stands for the Delaware Comprehensive Assessment System. And this is actually an assessment which is given several times throughout the year. And what it does, therefore, is allows us to measure the progress that each student makes during the course of the year while they're in any particular teacher's classroom.
With the D.C.A.S, it's a moment in time. You're comparing apples to apples, and you're comparing a student's performance within a given year. So teachers can intervene appropriately as needed when that child is still sitting in the classroom. The good news we have from families is because we can track the student's success throughout the year, they will still be able to see that growth. So while they may not be at the proficiency level that we have set, they will really be able to see that they are growing and moving in the right direction.
The DSTP was a grade level test. Everybody took it at grade level, whether you had special needs or whether you were highly gifted. You were taking one grade level test. And if you hit the ceiling, so be it. But we couldn't tell if you were way above the ceiling or slightly above the ceiling. And that opposite was true at the lower end of the spectrum. And now with the adaptive feature, we can get a better picture of exactly where the student is operating.
So the benchmark is set. If the student misses questions, the student falls below the proficiency level. If the student starts answering questions really well, he goes above the proficiency levels, so that teacher knows from the first 30 days of school when we give that assessment at what performance levels students are operating, and they can individualize instruction like never before.
It could be analogous to getting on the scale every Monday morning. If you're trying to diet and you're finding that you need some proof that something's working so that you either continue or you have to modify. You have to intensify your efforts or whatever. We are able to gather information on the progress, the academic progress of students, and then we're able to use that to judge whether or not we need to reteach, move faster. We have the opportunity to make the adjustments in our instruction. But we also use it to look at attendance data, to look at discipline data. We can get a full picture of any student, and from that, as we put together a team that is working to enable this student to maximize his or her learning, we can look at all the factors. So all the data, all the statistics, all the information that we can gather, we now can house on matrices and take a look at it to make very wise decisions, and then everybody is more efficient.
In our collaborative meetings, we know where our students are, and we can make those adjustments, whether it's on a global scale where we really have to adjust the questions we're asking on our summative assessment, or somebody needs to spend a little bit more time with Susan because something's happening with Susan's 7th period. We may need to adjust Susan's schedule. We may want to make some adjustments on our team with how maybe Susan's with some students in 7th period that doesn't work well with her. The staff has the flexibility to make those adjustments, but it's all based on student data. We don't do things just because, well, this may sound good. We really try to have the decisions we make built on what the students are producing at the time.
Because it is a statewide assessment too, we can look at demographic similarities and find schools, as we've talked about before, a Keene Elementary, a Woodbridge Elementary, a school that is really doing well, and we can share with other schools in other districts. You should really go see what they're doing in Laurel. You should really go see what's happening in Brandywine, because now we're comparing apples to apples, and teachers can talk across the state. Teachers can share across the state.
I would say the biggest difference between DSTP and D.C.A.S is we went from a 5-point performance scale on the DSTP to a 4-point performance scale. Just in adjusting those cut scores and increasing the standards, as according to our superintendent, state superintendent, Lillian Lowry, we were looking at a comparison drop of about 20 points in each of the testing areas. When we do the comparison DSTP with this year's D.C.A.S, we're actually projecting where we want to be with the DSTP calculations. However, the D.C.A.S scores are going to drop slightly. And for a couple of reasons for that, again, would be going to a 4-point performance-based scale compared to a 5, as well as the increase in the standards over the last year.
There's no silver bullet. It is a better way to assess in that you aren't waiting for 1 week of testing at the end of the year, and you do get immediate results.
Well, we expect scores to decline, not because students know anything less, but because we've essentially said you have to have a higher score in order to be judged proficient. And we know that people are going to be unhappy about it, but again, we think this idea of being honest with our kids about what it takes to be proficient is incredibly important.